Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Lili Kazemi.
And I'm Scott McCandless. It is the week of March 6th, and this is your Monday briefing. Both the House and Senate are in session this week. The House Ways and Means Committee will actually be holding a hearing outside of Washington, D.C. in Yukon, Oklahoma on March 7th. It is the second in what is expected to be a series of field hearings held outside of Washington, D.C. Back in Washington, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell will be on the Hill, testifying before the House Financial Services and Senate Banking Committees. Then on Thursday, the president's FY 2024 budget is expected to be released, and on Friday, March 10th, the Ways and Means Committee will hold a hearing featuring Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Secretary Yellen is also expected to appear before the Senate Finance Committee as early as next week.
In a February 28th speech, President Biden alluded to raising some taxes as part of his fiscal year 2024 budget proposals. Joining us today to share her insights on what we might see in the president's budget is Janice Mays. Janice, welcome to Policy on Demand.
Thanks for inviting me.
So Janice, let's start big picture. What do we expect to see in President Biden's forthcoming budget, and what might it contain from a tax proposal perspective?
The president will be telling a divided Congress that what his priorities are for the year. Now, it's not going to be a budget that gets enacted, but that's important. And he's going to want to weave some broad themes into those bottom line numbers that are the budget. One of those themes will be that he can achieve great social goals while decreasing the deficit. So consequently, his budget is likely to return to those proposals he made last year and the year before to raise taxes, even though those are not realistic at this point. And he's going to include the 3 State of the Union mentions, an updated billionaires surtax, a more generous child tax credit, and an increase to 4% in the stock buyback tax. It may include some surprise incentives for things that kind of targeted things that he's trying to get people to do and have that in there. My open question about it, though, is does it focus at all on 2025 and those TCJA legacy issues, ending the individual tax cuts, some of the other things we've been concerned about, or does he wait till next year to begin to tell the public before that 24 election what his thoughts are here? If you look back at last year's budget, they were able to include 174, repealed 174 amortization for 4 years because they cited the Build Back Better bill that had passed the House. We don't know what they're going to do on some of those things this year.
And Janice, we have some ongoing budget and specifically debt ceiling talks that are hanging over the Congress. To what extent do you think this budget will impact those talks? And frankly, where do those talks stand at this point?
The debt limit negotiations are still in their early stages. Other congressional leaders have said we'll accept anything that the president and the House Republicans can agree on here. And the president and Speaker McCarthy did have one meeting at the White House, but that meeting was just to show how broad their differences are and how the debt limit should be approached. Right now, Speaker McCarthy is seeking consensus among his House Republicans about what spending cuts they really want to push for. And what this budget does is it puts out there the president's proposals on at least appropriations for the year, the government funding for the year, and it gives them a target to begin to decide what they would cut that the president still has potentially increased at this point. So it helps them to their starting point on these negotiations. But they're going to have to act probably before the end of July, and that's still almost 5 months away. So expect this to really get serious when you're closer to that date and probably go to the wire.
So Janice, you mentioned the TCJA earlier. There are ongoing questions about the future of the TCJA, as well as the president's tax proposals and the future of the OECD Global Tax Deal, which Chairman Smith of the House Ways and Means Committee has recently stated allows China to gain a competitive edge in the global economy. Given all this, how do you see the future of U.S. tax policy being debated when Secretary Yellen testifies before the House Ways and Means Committee?
Chairman Smith's recent letters to both Treasury and the OECD indicate that this hearing will not be gentle. The Treasury and OECD efforts, especially on Pillar 2 and its under tax profit rules effect on business tax credits that the Congress wants to enact and has enacted, will be front and center. And it will be exacerbated by a congressional view that this Treasury consults too little with them. So just that will help set the tone for this hearing, unfortunately. And both parties in the House, Democrats and Republicans, are focused on China and competition with China, supply chain security, and jobs, and the effect of all of that on jobs. So all of that will be aired at the hearing. But with an eye toward the 2024 elections, I expect the bigger focus to be on the other issue you mentioned, the making the TCJA tax cuts for individuals permanent. I think that will be front and center. Expect talk about Section 199A's effect on pass-through businesses, and they'll be viewed as the job creators at this point. There will be lots of things going on, and this hearing will be a chance for members to show what they care about. And they're going to care about domestic issues, I think, the most. There's likely to be a question or two on Section 174's amortization, but most of this focus will be about the economy, about families, about farmers, and about jobs, and with a little bit of international protectiveness kind of added in.
Thank you, Janice. That was a really helpful preview.
Thanks again for having me.
Be sure to check out the latest Week in Review featuring Todd Metcalf, which is attached in the description of this episode, and stay tuned for this Friday's Week in Review.
As always, thank you for spending this time with us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.